Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So we've had a lot of recent developments in the news surrounding the 2021 California gubernatorial recall election where Gavin Newsom will actually have a chance to be recalled. We will see if he will get removed. And I wanted to discuss what the chances of it happening were. This is not me saying that it's going to happen. I'm not going to say that there's 0% chance that it is going to happen either. But altogether, I would have to say it's not the most likely course of action. I'm going to explain why, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. And there's several factors that this depends on. Now, this is not a video discussing the candidates altogether. This is not going to be an anti-Jenner dissertation. I already did one of those a month or two ago. I will leave the link to that video as an end card at the end of this video if you guys want to go watch that when you're done watching this video. But until then, this is going to be talking about the recall election as a whole. So we're going to get right into this, but first, I have to tell you guys about my good friends over at My Patriot Supply. Friends, it seems like big government and tech giants are trying to destroy America. Everything they touch turns into a disaster, and pretty soon the whole system will fall apart, and the first thing to fall will be the food supply chain. So do you have enough emergency food to get through a serious long-term crisis where you can't even get food at the grocery store? Because most people don't, and they're going to panic when the time comes. That's why the smart move now is to get long-term storage emergency food before things go bad. I highly recommend My Patriot Supply. They've served millions of American families and have over 41,000 4- and 5-star reviews. Their mission is your survival, and right now you can save 25% on a 4-week kit of emergency food that will save the day, probably soon. Order a starter kit for each member of your family and they'll ship everything quickly and discreetly to your door. Go to preparewithredeagle.com so you can claim your 4-week emergency food kit and save 25% in the process. Again, that is preparewithredeagle.com. Okay, thank you, motorcycle. Very cool. So, all right, guys, approximately we are just less than 2 months away, probably around 6-7 weeks away from the California governor recall, where we will see if Newsom is removed from office. Again, a lot of people are saying it's going to be a long shot, and they're right to an extent, but we're going to analyze the chances of it happening, looking at polling, etc. But I will say this recall is going to be scheduled, yes, September 14th, but mail-in ballots are actually going to be shipped out in about 3 weeks or so. Now, again, they're shipping them out very early. I think that sending everybody the mail-in ballots, I think it's ridiculous. Typically what the Democrats do and what they did in the 2020 election cycle is they, in many states, shipped everybody ballots, and then they hounded them with text messaging and everything. And that was partially one of the reasons why you could say they had a leg up. But I will say that Republicans need to understand this. We got to strategize no matter what happens. We need to have a plan A, B, C, D, and E because they do. We need to have the same thing. I was contacted by the Biden campaign probably about 20 times, and I'm not a registered Democrat, but they still track me down probably because they know that I'm, 20 years old at the time and probably thought based off of that fact that I would be voting Democrat. They're wrong, by the way, but the bottom line is we need to do the inverse, and that's how we win elections. But that's a little bit beside the point. But again, they're shipping the ballots out early. Universal mail-in voting. There is ballot harvesting that will likely happen in the days after that will also kind of determine the count because obviously California, they literally take forever to count all of the ballots in every single election. They take weeks and weeks even in many cases. I think back in the primary, they were counting ballots like 2 weeks after the election took place. And even though the result was already determined, it still did arguably impact some of the races for House candidates. Obviously, some candidates may have thought they were winning, and then the ballots came in. So we need a speedy and transparent process. Florida gets like 95% of the ballots counted within a couple of hours. California has more people, but not like by that much. They should be able to count them within, 12 hours or so and get the thing to 100%. So we have to talk about election reform, and we need election reform in this country, obviously. But besides the point, looking at this recall election, we have to understand, obviously, there are a lot of candidates, replacement candidates on both sides. And I think a lot of these people are testing the waters for 2022 because, again, it all comes down to turnout. If Democrats don't turn out, but Republicans do, and every Trump voter turns out, but, probably like 60% of Biden voters do, then Republicans would prevail. So it all comes down to turnout. These lower turnout off-year elections, it's not even on election day, Republicans are angry, then that is a clear excuse for there to be a recall that possibly could happen. It's come at the right time, but it still doesn't mean it's going to happen. Now, here's the thing. Democrats are not all fans of Newsom. So obviously, if it was Republican versus Newsom, it would be different, but there are still some left-wing candidates that have entered this race. And there are some, people on the left that are mad at Newsom and they also want to recall them. But will it be enough? Not exactly. We'll get to polling in a second, but anything is possible. It all comes down to turnout. But Republicans here, you see all these candidates. I did a video talking about Faulkner and Jenner, and obviously there are others that have recently entered. Larry Elder, who is a conservative talk show host, he was actually kicked off the ballot, and now they are putting him back on the ballot, so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But a lot of people are saying that Larry Elder may be the front runner of the replacement candidates. But the truth is, if the recall passes, we're probably going to see a Republican governor because it's going to pass by such a slim margin if it does, and the Democrat candidates won't be enough. And a lot of the support is consolidated behind John Cox and Larry Elder. So looking at this, all the endorsements list here, obviously on Wikipedia, here are the predictions. Likely D inside elections, part of the election mafia, but I wouldn't necessarily doubt that their claim is actually right. But we have to look at the polls. And there are some polls that actually do show this and show that the recall is actually possible. Obviously in the polls, it is below 50% for no. Yes is roughly around 43% or so. So it's roughly a 4 to 5 point differential. Now, the undecideds could easily break no, but if turnout is on the Republican side, they could easily break yes. And it is true, mail-in balloting. But back in California's 25th, there was a lot of mail-in ballots that were sent out to everybody in the district, and Mike Garcia overperformed vastly. So again, anything is truly possible. But I would probably say, if I'm going to bet my money on it, I would probably say it would not pass, but I think it would be, within 10 or so, unless the undecideds break vastly in the other direction. But it does seem like the polls with the lowest amount of undecideds overall do tend to actually show it being closer, which is something that needs to be taken into consideration, definitely. You had a Moore Information Group poll, a Republican internal poll, but it was likely voters, and there was a massive gap. So if turnout does benefit the Republicans, it's possible. It's possible it gets close because the polls with likely voters in them, some of them, not all of them, but some of them have showed that Republicans are doing fairly well with them overall. And again, Newsom is leading a lot of these polls. Obviously, he's roughly around 50%. I do believe it's going to be fairly close, but again, he is having a problem with Latino voters in the state, and we saw this all throughout the 2020 election cycle as well, not just in Texas or Florida, but Latinos kind of moving away from the Democrats a little bit. And it just shows you that when you don't cave on issues like immigration and economic populism, you actually gain with Latinos, unlike the Cato Institute strategy that they've been talking about forever, where you pander and talk about free markets and it doesn't get you anything. Well, Donald Trump brought something new to the table and he got a good amount. And you look at counties like Los Angeles and even some of the Bay Area took a pretty sharp right turn, and some of that is also due to the Vietnamese voters. But it's interesting to see how that plays out. Will the trend continue? Because there's a lot of questions surrounding it. Because you have a lot of Hispanic voters that moved right in 2020. Will they continue to move right? Or will they bounce back the way they did after 2004? This is a question. We have to be cautiously optimistic, obviously. But it's interesting to look at for sure. But anyways, you look at the polls and it shows that it does seem as if a recall is probably not going to happen, but I'd say there's probably like a 10% chance it will. And I still encourage people to get out and vote to recall Newsom. Probably vote for Larry Elder as governor. I think Larry Elder is probably the best candidate in the race. And I do think he would actually have a shot to win, assuming the recall goes through. But like I said, probably about a 10% chance Newsom is removed. but we're going to have to see what happens. Either way, it comes down to turnout. The election is in the middle of September, and I will probably do a video or two as we get closer. But looking at the replacement candidates, you look at this, and it basically shows that the leader is actually, in all of these polls, you can tell that the leader here does seem to be Larry Elder. Larry Elder is approximately over 50% in recent polling, when you take all factors into account, which is very interesting. And you look at Cox. Cox was in the lead. Now Cox is fallen down below. And people are saying, what about Jenner? Are we actually going to have Jenner as governor? No, probably not. Probably at 5% right there. That green line right there, it's at 5% or so. There's virtually no chance. You have all these conservative Inc. people that are just using this candidacy as an excuse to cave on another issue, to go further left than your opposition was 5 to 10 years ago. Yet again, unsurprising. But overall, looking at this, we can see that Larry Elder is probably going to be the guy if the recall goes through. But will it go through? It's a little bit tough. It's tough to really determine that. Obviously, this is the time it would go through. But other than that, I think it's just for a lot of people to test the waters for 2022. I think a lot of the same candidates are going to run again in 2022 after the recall is over. I don't see people doing a lot of campaigning specifically for themselves. I see a lot of candidates, however, campaigning against Newsom, and a lot of people are campaigning against Newsom. And maybe it is true that there's a chance that it goes through, because we do see a lot of Democrats and left-wing groups throwing money into this in a way that I really don't think that they would, unless they were a little bit threatened. Obviously, they may not see it as the number one threat, but I think they may be a little bit threatened that it could be closer than expected. So they just kind of want to allocate their resources behind this, which I think is a pretty good troll. Because it seems as if they, in some cases, are actually outspending the recall effort. So you're kind of trolling the left. It's called we do a little bit of trolling. It's called we make the left waste their resources. But yeah. And the last question people are going to ask is, how does it happen? You look at this map right here. You see the trends. You're going to have to do better in Orange County. You're going to have to do even better outstate. But also the Latino trends in places like LA County and the Bay Area, they're going to have to accelerate. I'm not sure if that's going to happen enough for the recall effort to pass, but again, it all comes down to turnout, and we will see what happens. But either way, guys, it's going to be interesting, and it's called we do a little bit of trolling, make them waste their resources either way. So either way, we do need to stay on watch, and we do need to keep voting. And 2022 could be a good year, but 2021, it's a little bit boring, this election cycle, the off year. But either way, it's interesting to see this one little Californian election pop up, so it's one more thing we have to analyze. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Please like this video down below, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.